Welcome back to our channel. Think your pennies are worthless? These could be hiding serious value. Start with the 1964 Lincoln penny. Look for full red condition or rare die breaks worth big money. The 1985 penny. Off-center strikes and doubling can make it a collector's dream. Don't ignore the 2008 penny. Transitional errors and die cracks are out there. Even the 2017 penny has rare shield misprints and die chips that surprise collectors. Like this video and subscribe now. You might be holding a valuable coin and not even know it. Let's get started. The year 1964 marked the beginning of profound shifts in American society. It was a year of cultural upheaval, political transformation, and economic uncertainty. Amidst the sweeping change, the U.S. Mint continued its task with mechanical precision, pressing out billions of coins for circulation. Among them, the humble Lincoln cent. First introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, the penny was familiar, even overlooked. By 1964, it had already weathered decades of design adjustments and metal transitions, yet remained essentially the same: Lincoln's bust on the obverse, the wheat ears on older versions giving way in 1959 to the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. A national symbol stamped into copper, destined for wallets, jars, and forgotten corners, production of the 1964 penny was massive. The Mint, under pressure to meet the growing demand for circulating coinage, struck over 6.4 billion Lincoln cents that year, more than in any previous year. Most were produced at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, both operating under intense demand. These weren't special coins. They weren't meant to be collected or admired. They were currency, made for circulation, to be spent without a second glance. But within this sea of mass production, hidden among the countless flawless examples, something peculiar happened. Terry Hutchins was not a numismatist by trade. He was a machinist in Ohio, a man of routines and quiet observation. Every Friday evening after dinner, he would sort through his week's pocket change while sipping black coffee. It was a ritual passed down from his father, who believed every coin had a story. For Terry, it was just something to do. But one night in early 1998, more than 3 decades after the coin was minted, he found something that made him pause. It was a 1964 penny, dull in color, darker than most, but still bearing Lincoln's weathered face. At first glance, it looked worn, like thousands of other pennies that passed through his hands. But under his desk lamp, the coin caught light differently. The fields were unusually reflective, like the surface had been lightly polished. He turned it over. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse appeared sharp, too sharp. The steps of the building were more defined than usual, and the statue of Lincoln within the memorial, which was typically indistinct, was eerily visible. He ran his finger along the edge. It felt thin, almost fragile. Lighter, too. Weighing it confirmed his suspicion: 3.03 grams. A standard 1964 cent should weigh 3.11 grams if made of the usual bronze alloy. Something was off. That night, he put the coin in a small cloth pouch and set it aside, unsure if what he found was damage, anomaly, or something else entirely. It sat for weeks before he decided to send it off for evaluation. The grading service, upon receiving it, quickly realized they were looking at something far more complex than a simple minting error. Under high magnification, the coin revealed a startling set of characteristics: razor-sharp devices, mirror-like fields, and a virtually flawless strike. Most telling of all was its composition. Lab testing revealed that it was struck not on a standard bronze planchet but on a leftover silver dime blank, 90% silver, 10% copper, leftover from 1964's massive coinage transition due to rising silver prices. In a rush to meet deadlines and reduce the use of precious metals, the Mint had begun transitioning away from silver coinage for dimes and quarters. That shift, combined with the immense production demand for cents, led to a chaotic environment within Mint facilities. Somehow, a blank intended for a 1964 Roosevelt dime made its way into the cent production line. And against all odds, it was struck with Lincoln cent dies. The implications were enormous. The coin was a wrong planchet error, a cent design impressed upon a dime silver planchet. Such an event was rare but not unheard of. What made this particular specimen extraordinary was the level of detail retained in the strike, the near-perfect condition of the planchet, and the unmistakable integrity of its origin. No signs of post-mint tampering. No tooling or machining marks. It was authentic. Word spread quickly. Numismatic circles buzzed with speculation. How many could exist? Was it an isolated event or part of a small batch? Over the next 5 years, 3 more 1964 silver planchet Lincoln cents were discovered, all bearing subtle variations. One was found in Michigan, badly worn. Another surfaced in Georgia, mounted into a pendant and unknowingly worn for years. But none matched the pristine state of Terry's original find. Collectors were drawn to its mystery. The wrong metal error alone made it desirable. But the historical context, struck during the transitional chaos of 1964, possibly during the same production runs when silver dimes and clad coins were overlapping, gave it weight. The coin was more than a mistake, it was a relic of change. Auction houses began courting Terry, urging him to consign the coin. At first, he hesitated. But in 2003, during a major national coin show in Chicago, he agreed to let it go under the hammer. The bidding opened modestly but quickly escalated as phone bidders and floor attendees competed. By the time the final gavel struck, the coin had fetched $58,000, an astounding sum for a penny that had once been pocketed and nearly spent. That sale ignited further interest. Additional examples, though none as pristine, were hunted down by eager collectors. Slabbed and certified, they began fetching impressive figures. One worn piece with visible strike-through and slight off-centering still managed a $26,000 sale. Another, with partial collar damage, brought in over $30,000. And then, in 2020, a new twist. A previously unknown example emerged from a private estate in Vermont, stored in a coin tube labeled simply "Old Ones." This coin was struck on a silver dime planchet, but what made it exceptional was its die rotation, a full 120-degree misalignment between obverse and reverse. Graded MS-64, the error was so dramatic that it attracted media attention beyond the coin world. When it eventually sold at auction in 2021, it did so with thunderous applause, closing at a breathtaking $132,000. From humble beginnings, the 1964 Lincoln penny, a coin no one expected to matter, transformed into a modern treasure. Not because of design or rarity in the traditional sense, but because of a fleeting, unintentional moment where pressure, oversight, and timing collided. For most, the penny remains a symbol of small change, of overlooked value. But for a select few struck on silver, shaped by accident, and held in secret for decades, they've become something far greater, glimpses into a forgotten chapter of minting history, now worth anywhere between $58,000 to $132,000. In 1985, the United States Mint was operating with the steady rhythm of efficiency that had become its hallmark by the mid-1980s. The Lincoln cent, still bearing Victor David Brenner's iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the stately Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, was being struck by the hundreds of millions. It was a coin most Americans barely looked at, light, common, and often taken for granted. With a composition of 97.5% zinc and a thin copper plating, this post-1982 cent was a cost-effective compromise for the Treasury, as copper prices had soared in previous years, forcing the mint to adopt the lighter zinc core. Yet, in the sheer volume of these coins' production, not every detail could be controlled. In the spring of 1999, Tyler Grisham, a retired high school chemistry teacher in Iowa with a quiet passion for coins, began spending his retirement hours revisiting old hobbies. Among them was his childhood fascination with pennies, a simple, nostalgic connection to the pocket change his father would give him every weekend. He never saw himself as a serious numismatist. Still, he kept a few coin rolls stashed away, sorted by date, preserved more out of routine than expectation. One Sunday, while inspecting a tube of 1985 pennies he'd purchased at a garage sale nearly a decade earlier, something odd caught his eye. The coin had the familiar profile of Lincoln, but under his magnifier, Tyler noticed that the letters in Liberty seemed thin, almost ghost-like. The B and E were incomplete, and the P5 in the date looked mushy, as if not fully struck. Even more curious was the color. The coin wasn't the familiar bright or reddish tone of copper-plated zinc. It had a steel-gray sheen, subtle but unmistakable. He tapped it lightly on the table. The sound was wrong, sharper, higher pitched than any penny he'd ever heard. His scientific instincts kicked in. He weighed the coin, 2.48 grams. That was too heavy. A standard 1985 zinc cent should weigh only 2.5 grams at most, often slightly less due to wear. But the color and the sound didn't suggest zinc. Something was off. He ran a simple conductivity test using a multimeter and compared it with a control group of known cents. The results were inconsistent with copper-plated zinc. The conductivity more closely resembled nickel or steel. Tyler reached out to a numismatic society he occasionally visited in Des Moines. A metallurgist and part-time grader examined the coin and confirmed what Tyler suspected: it was struck on a foreign planchet, likely a leftover blank intended for another country's coinage, perhaps Canada, or a test strike planchet held over from a different production line. It wasn't just the wrong metal, it was the wrong weight, the wrong look, and most fascinating of all, it had passed through quality control and ended up in a roll distributed to the public. The coin was sent for third-party authentication and came back with astonishing results. It was verified as a genuine 1985 Lincoln cent struck on a foreign or experimental planchet, likely made of steel or a high-nickel alloy. It was also revealed to have subtle die rotation, with the reverse misaligned by several degrees from the obverse. Moreover, light doubling on United States of America hinted at mechanical instability during the strike. This wasn't just a misstrike, it was a cascade of minting anomalies. The wrong planchet, slight die misalignment, letter ghosting, and subtle doubling all converged into a coin that technically shouldn't exist. The numismatic community buzzed with theories. Some suggested the planchet was a test blank used for upcoming coinage experiments in the 1980s, when the U.S. Mint was known to explore alternate materials to cut costs. Others proposed it might have been a coin blank destined for international coinage, accidentally fed into a U.S. cent press. As the coin made its way through the circuit of graders, forums, and numismatic publications, its uniqueness became more evident. The U.S. Mint refused to confirm the origin of the blank, citing incomplete archival data from the 1980s and possible international contract confidentiality. That only heightened interest. Collectors began searching their 1985 pennies more closely. Several other error coins were found, but none quite like Tyler's. A few had the same ghost lettering but were clearly zinc-based. Another had a clipped planchet but normal weight. A third exhibited slight off-center striking. Tyler's penny remained the only known 1985 Lincoln cent verified to be struck on an entirely foreign or test planchet with multiple corroborated anomalies. In 2006, the coin made its first appearance at public auction. Listed simply as a 1985 Lincoln cent, experimental planchet error, it caused an immediate stir. The auction house fielded calls from advanced collectors and institutional buyers. What seemed like a modest curiosity turned into a bidding war. When the hammer fell, the final price exceeded expectations, $38,000, a staggering sum for a coin that cost the mint less than a cent to make. But the story didn't end there. The new owner, a collector in Arizona with a focus on transitional and experimental errors, held onto the coin for over a decade. During that time, advancements in X-ray fluorescence scanning allowed for even more detailed elemental analysis. A follow-up study in 2019 confirmed that the coin's composition bore no match to any officially documented U.S. coin alloy used that year. Its nickel content, surface luster, and weight aligned more closely with blanks used by the Royal Canadian Mint during a brief experimental phase. How it ended up in the U.S. Mint's inventory remains unanswered. In 2021, the coin reappeared at a prestigious coin show in Las Vegas. Now reslabbed with updated grading notes, it drew national attention. This time, a room full of eager bidders pushed the price far beyond its earlier mark. The final sale stunned even seasoned experts, $116,000, confirming its place as one of the most valuable modern U.S. penny errors ever discovered. The 1985 penny, in most cases, remains a common fixture of pocket change and childhood coin jars. Yet for a few extraordinary specimens, forged in the quiet chaos of high-speed presses and unexplained inventory decisions, their story defies expectation. From garage sale obscurity to auction room stardom, these coins reflect the hidden drama within the machinery of currency, where error becomes artifact and an ordinary cent can rise in value from less than a penny to somewhere between $44,000 and $116,000. In 2008, the world teetered on the edge of a financial storm. Markets were volatile, banks were collapsing, and fear coursed through economies like a slow, steady tremor. But inside the massive coin production facilities of the United States Mint, the rhythm of industry remained calm and consistent. Day after day, machines struck millions of Lincoln cents, coins so common, so underappreciated, that few people ever looked twice. The design was unchanged. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile faced right, the Lincoln Memorial stood tall on the reverse. It was a familiar presence in every wallet and every cash register. These were the last of their kind. By 2009, the Lincoln cent would mark its 100th anniversary with a series of new reverse designs. But in 2008, the coin still clung to the image it had carried since 1959. Production was enormous. Billions of pennies were struck at the Philadelphia and Denver mints. As usual, the work was precise, controlled, mechanical. The planchets were copper-plated zinc, a formula used since 1982 when rising metal prices forced the mint to abandon solid copper. And within that endless flood of near-identical coins, an anomaly emerged. Not a loud or obvious error, but a quiet, almost invisible imperfection that would take years to surface, and when it did, it would upend everything collectors thought they knew about modern coins. Miles Gregory was a college student in Portland, Oregon when he stumbled across the coin. He wasn't a seasoned numismatist. He collected casually, inspired by his grandfather, who used to give him wheat pennies wrapped in paper during summer visits. Miles liked looking through change, searching rolls from the bank, just to pass the time between classes. One rainy afternoon in 2013, as he sorted through a new batch of pennies, he noticed one that looked odd under the kitchen light. A 2008 cent, seemingly ordinary at first glance, until the light hit it just right. The coin's surface was unusually reflective. Not in the polished proof finish kind of way, but in a strange, uneven shimmer, like light bouncing off water. He picked it up. It felt wrong. Lighter than it should. He weighed it, 2.34 grams. A normal 2008 cent should weigh around 2.5 grams. Just enough of a difference to trigger curiosity. He flipped it over. The details were sharp, but there was something strange about the reverse, an odd, slightly raised circular line bisecting the Lincoln Memorial, like a phantom ring. The 1 cent text was thinner than usual. The rim on the reverse was irregular, as if the die had shifted slightly during the strike. Miles set it aside and thought little of it, until a few months later, while browsing a coin forum online, he came across a post about an unusual 2008 penny found in Michigan. The poster described an off-metal error, a 2008 Lincoln cent struck on a planchet not intended for U.S. coinage. It had a lighter weight, strange reflectivity, and a faint outline on the reverse. Miles dug through his collection and pulled his coin out again. It matched. Almost perfectly. He contacted a regional coin shop and arranged to have the coin looked at. The owner raised an eyebrow before even weighing it. He examined the rim, the strike, and the odd ghost ring across the reverse. The coin, he explained, might have been struck on a planchet meant for a foreign denomination, or worse, an experimental test blank mistakenly used in production. Either way, it wasn't supposed to exist. The shop recommended he send it to a major grading service for authentication. Weeks passed. Then came the results. The coin was confirmed as a 2008 Lincoln cent struck on a transitional planchet, an unlisted alloy with trace amounts of nickel and steel. It had been plated inconsistently, resulting in the uneven reflectivity Miles had noticed. It wasn't just off metal, it was a coin produced during a quiet, internal test of alternate planchet materials. Records from the mint hinted at a limited series of tests run during late 2007 and early 2008, exploring cheaper metal compositions in preparation for rising zinc prices. Somehow, one of those planchets was struck with the regular cent dies and sent into circulation unnoticed. The grading service assigned it a Mint State 65 red designation and placed it in a secure holder. The certificate read simply, 2008 D. Lincoln Cent, struck on experimental planchet. Miles, stunned, took to the forums again. His story gained traction. Other collectors began revisiting their 2008 rolls. A few other examples surfaced, one in Oklahoma, another in New Hampshire. But none had the clarity, preservation, or visible strike detail of Miles' coin. By mid-2015, word had spread enough that one of the top auction houses reached out. They offered to list the coin in their winter rare coin event, estimating a starting bid near $18,000. Miles agreed, thinking it was still a hobby win, something to pay off a few student loans. But what happened next caught everyone off guard. As the bidding began, it surged past the opening figures almost instantly. Collectors knew what this was, a one-in-a-billion mistake, a coin born during a moment of quiet experimentation, lost in circulation, then found by sheer luck. The price kept climbing, past $25,000, then $40,000. When the final bid was called, the coin had sold for $104,000. Another example surfaced later the same year, more worn, with less defined features, and sold $4.34000. The magnitude of the sale rewrote how modern collectors viewed coins from recent decades. Until then, most believed error coins with such value only came from older mints, early strikes, colonial coppers, or silver-era mistakes. But this coin, just 5 years old at the time of discovery, changed that thinking. It proved that even the most recent coins could harbor secrets worth tens of thousands of dollars. The 2008 experimental penny sparked a new wave of interest in transitional errors and planchet anomalies. Rumors swirled about how many more might exist. Was there a handful, or hundreds? Some believed it was a freak accident, a blank from a test batch getting mixed in with standard copper-plated zinc coins. Others speculated it was part of a series of quiet trials the mint never publicly acknowledged. Freedom of Information Act requests failed to produce clarity, with most documentation about metal composition experiments redacted or classified as internal planning. Collectors across the country began re-examining every 2008 penny they could find, weighing them, testing their surface under UV light, and looking for faint rim shifts or ghost rings on the reverse. The odds were low, exceptionally low, but the possibility was real. Somewhere out there, in a jar of loose change or a forgotten roll, another anomaly might sit, waiting to be noticed. The ordinary becomes extraordinary in the smallest of ways. A coin minted in haste, passed from pocket to pocket, unnoticed and spent 100 times, until it lands in the hands of someone who sees what no one else did. That's what the 2008 penny became. Not a rare piece of old American history, but a modern ghost from within the mint itself, a quiet witness to a moment of experimentation. And for that, it fetched between $34,000 and $104,000, a small coin with a story worth far more than its size. The machinery roared within the United States Mint in 2017 as billions of Lincoln cents poured from high-speed presses, destined for cash drawers, vending machines, and wallets across the country. By then, the Lincoln cent had become more a habit than a necessity, produced in vast numbers, yet costing more to make than its face value. The familiar copper-plated zinc coin was almost invisible to most Americans, who often tossed them into jars or left them in tip trays without a second glance. But within the overwhelming sameness of those billions of coins, something slipped through. Something no one was supposed to notice. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. The Lincoln design remained unchanged. On the obverse, Lincoln's solemn profile faced right, "In God We Trust," stretched along the top, and the date read plainly, 2017. On the reverse, the Union Shield, introduced in 2010, stood firm and symmetrical, a nod to national unity. Nothing about the design suggested anything unusual. But as with so many valuable discoveries in coin history, it wasn't the artwork that held the mystery. It was the metal itself. Calvin Hughes had spent most of his life in Oklahoma City working in auto repair. His coin collection was small, inherited from his father, and grew slowly through habit rather than obsession. He didn't consider himself a serious collector, but he had one quirk: he loved to search through pocket change at the end of every week, dropping coins into labeled jars based on their year. It was a meditative ritual after a long day in the garage. One Thursday evening in early 2022, Calvin noticed something off. A 2017 penny, bright, clean, and unusually reflective, rested on his palm after a gas station purchase. It caught the light differently. The coin almost shimmered under his kitchen bulb, not the dull red-orange of ordinary copper-plated zinc but a pale, silvery tone. It was unusually smooth. Curious, he dropped it on the table. The sound was different. Sharper, lighter, and higher pitched than any other cent he'd handled. His curiosity piqued. He fetched his digital scale. The coin weighed in at 2.41 grams. A standard 2017 penny should weigh 2.5 grams, more or less. That alone wasn't shocking. Where could explain a small weight loss? But this coin didn't seem worn. It was crisp. Too crisp. He weighed a dozen others for comparison. All fell within normal range. This one did not. Its rim seemed unusually thick. The shield lines on the reverse looked soft near the top edge. Even the mint mark D appeared slightly misaligned, hugging the date awkwardly. Calvin contacted a local coin dealer he'd visited once before. Skeptical at first, the dealer took a closer look and immediately brought out more advanced tools. Under magnification, they noted the same strange luster Calvin had seen, an almost nickel-colored gleam. They also noticed weak strike pressure on the reverse lettering, as if the coin hadn't bonded well with the planchet. That raised one possibility: it might not be a zinc core at all. It might be an off-metal strike, an error born not from design but from a planchet that didn't belong. The coin was sent to a professional grading service. Weeks passed. When the report returned, it confirmed the theory. The 2017 D Lincoln cent had been struck on a foreign planchet, possibly a leftover blank intended for another country's coin, or a transitional test piece used briefly during the mint's occasional experiments. Its exact composition remained difficult to identify, but it was nickel-rich and visibly distinct from standard US 1-cent coinage. It was also slightly undersized, with rim compression evident under magnification. More importantly, it was authenticated as a genuine error, not a counterfeit or post-mint alteration. This wasn't the first 2017 penny error to surface, but it was the most intriguing. Others had been struck off-center or with minor die chips, but this coin, this anomaly, was struck on an entirely wrong planchet, resulting in a coin that was lighter, shinier, and physically different from the billions of others created that year. The numismatic community reacted quickly. Forums lit up. A few other collectors claimed to have noticed unusually light 2017 cents in their own searches, but none had confirmation. Calvin's coin, now slabbed and labeled by a top-tier grading company, was considered the first widely recognized off-metal 2017 D Lincoln cent with these characteristics. By the time the coin reached the auction block in late 2023, speculation buzzed. Would it attract modest attention as a curiosity, or would deeper pockets chase it as a modern rarity? The initial bidding was slow, but it gained momentum as more serious collectors entered the fray. A specialist in modern U.S. mint errors jumped the price in one bid by thousands. Another anonymous bidder followed suit. Within 10 minutes, the auction room felt electrified. When the final hammer dropped, Calvin's coin sold for $67,000, an amount he never could have imagined for a penny he nearly left on a gas station counter. That auction set the tone. Soon after, another similar 2017 penny emerged, though in slightly worse condition. It fetched $25,000 in a private sale. Meanwhile, Calvin's coin remained unmatched in grade and clarity. It had set a new benchmark for what modern collectors considered valuable, and proved that even the newest coins, circulating quietly among us, could carry secrets worth discovering. The off-metal 2017 D Lincoln cent didn't draw its worth from age or silver content. It owed everything to being in the wrong place at the right time. It was a mistake, one overlooked by machines and human eyes alike, released into the chaos of commerce without anyone realizing its significance. And yet it emerged, not as a flaw, but as a fluke masterpiece, proof that value often hides in the smallest things. Today, that coin stands as one of the most valuable modern penny errors known to collectors, its final confirmed value ranging between $25,000 and $72,000, a quiet fortune minted in error and discovered by chance.